So yes, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending this talk for CCMI. Happy World Oceans Week to everybody, and my talk today will be about actually life as an ocean ambassador, and I put on Stop Whining because the things I do, they don't just come without any effort. So I'm going to tell you a few stories behind images, and I'm going to tell you about my attitude when I go somewhere or when I'm in the water, and what you have to do to come home with images you can use and how you can tell stories. So it's more about acting, using your voice, and practicing what you preach. And most of the time I have to introduce myself, and I will do that, but Beth did a great job. I'm Ellen, and I take images underwater, and I love to let my images talk. So I clearly love colder water and bigger animals. This is orcas in Norway. I love sharks. That one was a tiger shark. The other one is an oceanic whitetip in the Bahamas. We even made a documentary about sharks with Frans de Bakker, who works regularly for CCMI, and Michael Maas. It's called Epiphany, and I even did a course in shark feeding with the famous Christina Zenato. It's not because I wanted to feed wild animals, because actually I don't always agree with it, but she uses it to remove hooks, and I wanted to shark myself. And it was a great course, and I'm very happy I did it to better understand those animals. I also love, of course, whales. Of course, I like to take images in my own backyard here in Grand Cayman. I'm living in Grand Cayman, and I hope we can enter the water soon to go diving because this used to be the time of year when we could see silver sights. And the stingrays at the sandbar in Grand Cayman, I miss them. Going out there on a boat in the morning or in the evening is one of those moments where you can really chill and be one with nature. So the reason I put these images in is you have to be very grateful for what you have at home. And we are lucky in Grand Cayman to have this diversity, but there's areas also in England where you can get to the shore to have amazing dives. And this is a dive in England, the Farne Islands, which is actually my favorite dive of the whole world. Because I do love sharks and big animals and diving here, but whiskers are my favorite. Probably that's why I have so many pets, 4 cats and a dog. They just make me happy. It's marine mammals. They have this interaction and intelligence that suits my soul. And this is an image of a harp seal. It's one of the subjects very close to my heart. And for those of you who are interested, because my talk is going to be too long to finish it in the 40 minutes we get, if you just give a sign in the chat you want to learn more about harp seals and have questions and answers, give Beth a sign, and we do another session immediately after this one. It's another 5 minutes about the harp seals or 10 and questions. So just give a message. To take good images or images with an impact, you have to observe your subject, you have to connect with the subject, you have to wait, and then shoot. It's a different talk. I'm willing to give that one day, but that is my basic to create images with an impact. And it got me to some wild places, like Beth said. It got me to the General Assembly of the United Nations, and it's still one of the biggest honors of my life. So I believe my attitude in taking images and how I not just go for an image because it's a nice image, it got me the respect of my peers, and I'm very grateful for that, because I only started shooting in 2011. But at this moment, this is a bit of my in-crowd. It's Fabian Cousteau, Sylvia Earle, Paul Watson, Brian Scarry. I'm mailing, and I was on a trip recently with David Dubilet, Jennifer Hayes, Paul Nicklin, Christina Mittermeier. We all collaborating to make a change, be the change we want to see in this world. And it's very uplifting, because working in conservation can be a very lonely, depressing thing. So when you have a low, it's nice to other people have your back and you get lifted and you know why you are fighting so hard. To create the images I do, it takes some effort. It doesn't come naturally, and when it doesn't come to you, you have to create opportunities. So was I born a diver in control? No. Was I born a photographer with exceptional skills? For some say they don't like my images, but that's okay. No, I was booking a trip, a guarantee to come home with beautiful images. No, you have to take responsibility to be prepared and to be your best self when you go on those trips. The only thing most public sees is the success, but they don't see the blood, sweat, and tears you put into your imagery. So they don't see the hard work, the late nights, the sacrifices, the failures, the risks. Sorry, I went through this quickly. It's the iceberg theory, but actually you can apply it to everything in life. So you see a small thing at the surface, and then there's so much going on beneath the surface. This is me, a diver in control. Again, it's another talk, my journey in diving. I had a long break in diving, even though I only started in 2011. But 2 years ago, I took the jump to cave diving because I want to tell the stories about the aquifers in Mexico. Because all bodies of water have a huge importance, and we're getting at the point where water is being exploited for different reasons. I want to tell the story about the caves, not just with divers in the image, but with, I want to actually grab the spirit of the cave, or the soul of this cave. So it's a project I'm working on. But also the cave diving. So I wasn't a diver when I was born. It's a journey, and you have to invest time and money to be the best person or the best diver you can be. And to go into a cave, some people say, oh no, I would never do that. But once you start training, you get skills that make you very capable of doing, and then your dive limits, they go to a different stage, because you always have to limit your dives and dive your limits. So going in there with all the skills, you can be a very safe diver. And actually, training in cave diving made me a better diver all around. Because here, that's just a joke, the image. It's me and my buddy after 2 weeks of training, and it looks like a swamp where we're gonna go in. But it's actually, once you get through this bad visibility, you enter a very magical world, and you have to rely on your skills. You have to be very you have to be confident that you know your skills and just execute them, because this is the magical world. The world beneath the jungle in Tulum is one of the most beautiful places I've been in. And then that journey in diving goes further. I'm going to be on an expedition soon with Robbie Schmidtner, who is actually the person responsible for connecting two systems, Dos Ojos and Sac Actun in the Yucatan, and make it the biggest flooded cave in the world known, and the second biggest cave system in the world. And I was bringing him the Explorers Club flag because he did an expedition before. And the next thing I know, he's taking me on those amazing dives. Here you see the roots of the jungle in a cave, in a flooded cave. It's called Dos Pisos, and the area going there is called the Root Canal. It's truly magical. But just as diving, photography, you have to invest time in it. And there's a lot of things you can find online. There's a lot of great books. This book by Martin Etch is my Bible. It's very easy to comprehend, or yeah, my English sometimes is a bit bad, and I am rather tired, but it's easy to understand, and it's a great book. So you don't have to invest in trips far away to become a better underwater photographer. You can start at home by controlling your camera, knowing what you do with your buttons on land, learning about light, because that is the holy grail of photography. And if you don't understand what you're doing on land, you're certainly not going to understand it when you're underwater. So going on a trip, jumping in the water as a diver is not enough to create amazing images. And I see people coming out of the water the whole time. Yeah, it wasn't great. This person was in my way, or this happened, or that happened. Don't complain about it. Work on your skills, and there's always something in the water that you can document or that you can take a picture of. Sometimes it's worth just turning around. And I'm a big believer of, when you are in the water, creating good vibes. So I don't want anybody in the water getting frustrated, because it doesn't make nice encounters happen. Then when you are prepared, when you have knowledge about photography, when you know your camera and you go on that trip, you jump in the water, then you can take the shot you were hoping for. It gives you better chances to get that shot, not when you have to figure out your camera when you're in the water with an animal like this, because you don't have time, and it's also not safe to be distracted by that camera. So the trick is just to know it blindly and to control it blindly. For example, this image I took when I was having a really bad time in my life, because I knew diving for me was gonna stop. I had issues with my heart, and I had also on that dive an alternate vertigo, which started when I was diving in Cayman. But I told a safety diver, a person of the crew, he was behind me. I told him what was going to happen, probably that I couldn't see where the surface was anymore, but I had a plan to take this image if the subjects would work with me, and it happened. And then the safety diver took me to the surface. I ditched my tanks and I didn't dive for a few years. Yeah, prepare yourself. If you go to a destination, do your research, and I'm quite a geek regarding that. Because frustrations about a book trip can be easily avoided by doing your research and have realistic expectations, or even better, have no expectations at all. Just be grateful for what you have and what you will see. A few of the things you have to think about are: what is the best time of year? What will the weather be like? Is your body capable of doing the things you're asking it to do? And I just turned 50, and I really have to, even now, keep fit to do the things I'm willing to do in a few months. It's very important that you know what you're into if you sign up for a trip. And also, how will the animal encounters be and the interactions be? Are they going to be easy? Are they going to be hard to find? There's a big difference going on a shark dive or going looking for whales. You have to be prepared and have the realistic expectations about your trip. So I'm going to take you to a few destinations and explain a bit more about how it's actually happening when you're there, not just the images, but I will show some images too. Going to Tromsø for orca whales is a long and expensive trip for many. So why not go a few days before? Because the biggest frustration that I see with travelers is you have a connection you missed, or your luggage didn't arrive. And it's easy to solve a part of that by just giving yourself the time to acclimatize and book your trip with some extra days. It takes the pressure away, and it's a nicer way to start your holiday or your trip or your work, because for me it's sometimes more work, although I do enjoy it, of course, or I wouldn't be doing it. And the area in Norway, you have the Lofoten, which is one of the most stunning natural landscapes I've ever seen. You arrive on the trip and you can have weather days. This is my first time in Norway on a fishing vessel, former fishing vessel. And we had such a storm coming in that for 6 days we're going to be on the water trying to have these orca encounters. We couldn't have them because we couldn't get in the water. The storm coming in had actually destroyed the dinghy that you use to go closer to the animals. So we had land-based photography for 5 days and then only one chance to get in the water. And that trip was in January, where you only have 1 hour of daylight. So it was a very hard trip. I didn't have a picture of that trip, but that's what happened. So we went back the year later in October, November, which actually has 5 hours of daylight. But 5 hours of daylight has different challenges, because to have the encounters with orcas in the water, you sit on a dinghy, at the side of a dinghy, and you are prepared for 5 hours to jump in the water, get out, jump in the water, get out, to have as many possible encounters as you wish for. But it's a drain on your body. You see the person with the shiny dome in a wetsuit there, that's me. So I tried it for 3 days in a wetsuit, and then I couldn't warm up anymore, because once you go in the water, it's very warm actually. It's only 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, but that's warm. Because once you get on the dinghy, it's freezing cold, and the contrast of the warmer water and the cold is a drain on your body. And not only is it a drain on your body to be there 5 hours prepared, it's also a drain on the brain, because you have different conditions. The light changes the whole time, and I shoot manual like every photographer should do, because you can get so much more of yourself in the images. So you're dialing in on your settings. You have clouds, you have sunshine, you have the light that changes during those 5 hours, and keeping your brain alert to be prepared when something happens is very draining, and that's the reason you get so tired too. We only had 10 minutes of sunshine in 6 days during that trip, and this is the image I could take because I was prepared at all times. And then you have beautiful encounters. Sometimes this doesn't happen. I think it's a 1 out in 100 jumps into the water that this can happen, and I know people that never had it. When an animal like an orca comes to you, that's really exceptional. And when I came up from this snorkel, it's not diving that you do, you're snorkeling, I couldn't talk anymore, and I had tears in my mask, and my guide with me, he says, yeah, that was one of the encounters that just doesn't happen a lot. So that's orcas, the things you have to do to get there, the things you have to do to be able to take the image, and then that's how you get out of it. So be prepared. Being in the cold, it's not just the lips that swell up, but all your extremities are cold, and warming up every evening is hard. And sometimes it takes you like from when you get off the dinghy to when you go back out to do it all again. So I always have medication with me to keep me going, because day 1 is easy, day 2 gets you get tired, day 3 is really dragging yourself to do it all over again. But you should be grateful, because at least we didn't have weather days, and then a little whiskey in the evening can't hurt. The second destination I'm going to take you on is Svalbard for polar bears. Most people see just the images of the bears, but it's really hard in the Arctic to take images. It's a different story in Antarctica, where you have big colonies of penguins and so on. It's easier to get the images you envision. You get on a big boat, you get on a small boat, you get on land, and you take pictures. Trying to find polar bears is much harder. And to have an image like this, which is not the best image, but I'm happy because I was able to take it, you have to go far. And it starts at home with preparation of your gear. And you can pack everything neatly. This is not my packing, by the way. This is Michael's packing. He's a cinematographer. You arrive at the destination and pelican cases are on a sledge, and they say, yes, now throw everything into this. This is your pelican case. And I travel quite light because I like to simplify my gear, but for others that was absolutely a nightmare. But we have to, so I was quite chilled about it, but we have to understand when you go looking for those polar bears on snow scooters, actually it's an expedition on the ice of fjords. The things that keep you safe are more important. And what is it? It's fuel for the snow scooters. It's food, so you can have your meal. It's thermoses with hot water because it's astronaut food more. It's satellites that keep you safe, flares, all those things. So that gets priority and not your photographic gear or your exposure gear. And this is where you start. Everybody gets a snow scooter, and the guide is actually having a sledge with all the pelican cases with gear. The guide has it, not everybody, because the ice here, it's not ice, it's snow. It's still land-based. Once you go on the fjords, the ice can be in very bad condition, and we're just not used to pulling those sledge and getting out. You get to destinations. This is a settlement, a mining settlement, where you can either eat or sleep, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you have to sleep in old trappers' cabins. But once you get there, your gear is really battered. I had a new lens. It's a big lens, and those people knowing something about gear, it's a 600mm lens, quite expensive, and it just didn't look new anymore, and it didn't work. So I had to have a little intervention. And then you find the bear. And that's what bears do. They sit in front of a breeding hole with their paws up, so the seals under the water, under the ice, wouldn't hear them, because sound under ice goes a long way, travels faster than over land. They do that for hours, but during those hours you have to sit there and be prepared again to take a picture for when they do something else. And that's me just also not moving, because the seals can also hear my movement, and then they get a bit skittish. And I got an exposure suit. It's actually a floaty when you would end up in the water, so they can get you out and you not sinking. But it was way too big for me, because they are actually more catering to man. And I had a lot of air between the suit and my undergear. And also you can see the gloves I have, it says small. But I have this notion on the screen, maybe you have it too. But I have to go out of the screen to get it. Do you have it, Beth?
Sorry, Ellen, it's motion that we should see?
No, I have this little notion on my screen that says the meeting has been upgraded.
Yes, it looks like we're able to just keep going.
Okay, do you see it on the screen that I share or not?
No.
Okay, that's good then. I keep going. So I was getting cold because I had to remove my glove the whole time to be able to take a picture, and I want to have my finger on the trigger at all times. It's a thing that not everybody is so woman friendly, and certainly not for people that are short. So luckily I was prepared. I was prepared, and I had padding material in my photo pelican case, and that was a weasel. It's some undergarment, and I was able to get it in between my exposure suit and my thermal gear, and that kept me warmer because that dealt with the air that was available. Now, where do you change when you're in the Arctic? Not in those cabins, because some are maintained and are actually maintained because some people get caught up in bad weather, and then this gives them a place to shelter. But some of those cabins are taken over by polar bears. So as a man or woman, if you have to change, do it out in the open. And this brings me also to the next problem we sometimes have. That's how do you pee? So you need to pee. And this is an adult talk, so I can talk about it. I even talk about it in the school talks. You need to hydrate in this area more even than in a tropical area, because the air is so dry that you lose a lot of moisture through your skin. Some people say, well, I'm not going to drink all day so that I don't have to pee. But if you don't drink, you really get dehydrated. So you need to do that. And then the urine in your bladder, if you don't want to go to the toilet, your body is warming up that bladder, and the rest of your body is getting cold. So it's very important that you listen to your body and not try to play tricks on it, because you will be much colder when your body is trying to keep everything warm. That's the necessity of hydrating and also pee in the open. But that's the safest way to do it, when your guide can see you, when your team can see you, and they can alert you for polar bears if they are around and getting closer. If you are cold, jumping up and down, it's the only way to fight it, really. Get the energy going, and sometimes you have to take a break and just do that. And then you go back to waiting behind that lens, and you can see me behind the lens, and there's a small little spot in the picture, and that's a polar bear. That's how far you are away. And the waiting games goes on, and sometimes it's a whole day of this, so the bear doesn't move. And the only way you can get a decent image then is to play with when you have a change in light or a change in the texture of the landscape. But you have to be alert, because that bear can get up and suddenly do something in the blink of an eye, and if you miss that, that's like, okay, I have been waiting here for 7 days and nothing happened. But you be prepared, the same as with the orcas. Think about the light at all times, change your settings, dial in, and just be able to grab those moments, to be able to grab these moments. This is one of my favorite images. I call it a Tai Chi bear. It's a frozen moment. And actually that young bear was trying to keep open breeding holes for seals. So they would pop up and then he could grab them. That's his meal. But he was still learning. It was a young bear, 2 years. His mom was still around. And he actually played with those breeding holes. And when he was able to open them, he went for a swim. So he didn't know yet that he needed to preserve energy, because hunting on the ice is, it's hard for polar bears. And the ice is melting earlier in the year and it's freezing later. So their time of hunting is getting really, really short. Sometimes it's easier to go to the bears or to get a bit closer when you all jump on the pelican case train, what we call. So you get to a place, you get off, have your tripod, set it up, take pictures or try, wait, and then get up again when the bear should move too far to be in reach of your lens. And then you return to the snow scooter and you have this bear that tries to eat that. So don't leave things unattended in the Arctic. Now I'm going to take you to another place I really love. It's Churchill in Canada, Hudson Bay, where I've been to find beluga whales. It's one of those areas where in summer the belugas come in and they come there to feed on capeling. The capeling come in and they come there to spawn. They get rid of their winter skin by actually rubbing their skin against the rubble, and they also are there to give birth to their young. And it's very important you are aware that it's a tidal thing to get out to the beluga whales, because this image was taken on my first trip. I didn't have my luggage, I didn't have my photo gear, but this was 11 o'clock in the evening. So they just, and I just said, yes, I'm gonna go, get me something, and I take my GoPro and I'm gonna join you, because it's really beautiful. And I was very grateful to go there. What you see here is a slick line. It's where the water of the river, the Churchill River and Hudson Bay comes together. And it's where you can see well, not a lot underwater. It's very murky. But once you see the bubbles of the belugas, you just go, this can't be happening. Most of us have seen belugas on pictures, but not in the wild. So I got very excited. And then when you see those black backs coming closer to you, you really say, that can't be, because most animals are skittish. They never come up to a boat. And then they tell you, yes, you can jump in, go, go, go. And this is what you see. So, blue, beautiful green water. But I was so grateful because I could hear them, and they are called canaries of the sea, and the noise is just mesmerizing. So I truly enjoyed that, and a good thing I did, because the rest of the week we had the fog, and they actually told me, you can go out, we can try another day. So on 6 days that I was there, I went to look for belugas twice only, in the fog, and they put me behind the boat with a rope, and the fog became so thick that my captain told me, if I give you a pull, just grab the rope and get on the boat as quick as you can, because something might be going on. And so without even trying to, what's happening? So I was on snorkel, I pulled my way up, I got onto the ladder, and my captain says, polar bear in the water. And I was able to grab my land camera and just take a shot of this polar bear. And it was a shot that later an editor saw, and it's not a good shot, but he got interested in me, in my photography, and it actually landed me a spot in the Blancpain. It is still 50 fathoms, which is a big honor. It's 50 of the world's craziest photographers, and a beautiful art book. So never give up and just take the picture, even if it's not a good one. This is the only image I got that year from a beluga. So I went back the next year, and I was happy, because I was thinking, how can I work with these elements, and how can I get the images I want to take? So I decided that I was going to try for the belugas to follow me, and not me following them, or jump in the water where they are and then just see what they were going to do. Because most of the time they love to hang out in bad visibility. They're so intelligent, they play with you. They're actually making fun of you, because you are a not so fast human being and you can't keep up with them. I had little ribbons around my arms, white and red ones, and in a dry suit. I was making turns, and I was swimming out of the bad visibility and the murkiness to an area where there were still challenges like thermoclines, but they followed me. And it worked so well that even I had to get out of the water at a certain time, because these were 2 pots of male belugas, and they were trying to get my attention, and they were showing dominance behavior, snapping at me and at each other and biting each other. And it was at a certain moment, those pots were like 50 animals around me, and those are big animals and very intelligent animals. So my captain said, you have to get out, because it's really dangerous now. So I got out, and then they didn't want to leave the boat. They stayed with us for a while, and we couldn't start the boat, and we just enjoyed it, but then we had to get back because of the tides. But those images I was able to take there, I'm really very happy, because the year after, they didn't allow people to go in anymore with belugas. So even if the conditions don't look well, you just have to go again and try. If you don't try, you will never get the images anyway. And of course, I would have loved blue water and visibility of 100 meters or something, which is impossible. But I went anyway, I persisted, and I got these. When we talk about thermoclines, and this is an image from Svalbard, where I was for polar bears, this is what a thermocline looks like. And taking images with bad visibility and thermoclines is not easy, and I can't give a solution for that. It's just something you can only solve by patience and persistence. So there's no reason to say, oh, I can't take an image because the visibility you don't have to whine about it. You just have to keep trying, because it is possible and there are gaps in it, but you need to stay in the water. And it's easy to do when you are on snorkel, because you don't have a time limit unless you have tides. But in Svalbard, I just wanted to say this image, you can see the snout of the beluga is sharp, but the eyes get lost in the thermocline. But still, I took that image because it tells you so much about the area these beluga whales live in. They live for most of the year in the dark, under the ice, and they have a hard time keeping breathing holes open, or polynyas, and that's what you see also on their noses. So it's an image bringing us into their world, and that's the reason I took it, even though it's lost in a thermocline. Back to Svalbard with the harbor seals. So it's very shallow, it's thermoclines everywhere, and I'm shooting with the fisheye lens. So between me and the animal, there's maybe just 1 meter, but if the thermocline is there, that's the image I will get. So they are a bit not used to people, so they are skittish, and you see the shadows swimming around, but they don't always come up to you. And when they do, like this one, the image is not sharp, and even they were sometimes on my dome, and that's like, oh no, yes, thermocline. So I started to think, what can I do? Well, I could show that area. It's one of the places high up north, 79 degrees latitude. And it's one of those areas that has some history, because some of the expeditions going to the North Pole had their base camp there. It's a little sheltered bay. We were there 4 days because we had issues with the boat we were on. And we just made the most of it, hanging in the cold water, our guides on a dinghy behind us, checking for polar bears. And this is a split shot. I don't like to call it split, it's a half-half. David Dubilis says splits are for something that's a dessert and has a banana in it. So it's a half-half shot. But it gives you a sense of the location. It's a very harsh location, like the Arctic is. And then by persisting, I have 2 shots I came home with of those harbor seals, and I'm very happy with them, because this is my favorite shot. It goes against all rules. I shot in a downward angle, but the eyes looking to me, I call it Arctic Soul, and it tells a story about this harsh environment and this lonely environment where these animals have to survive. And it did do well in gallery sales, so that's why we do it. Work with what you have, be grateful for every encounter you have, even if the images are not possible, because being in the oceans is a privilege. And because we have extra time, we can go to the harp seals, and it's my favorite subject. It's a project I've been working on for over 6 years. And the reason was, in 1977, Paul Watson and Brigitte Bardot, she was a famous French actress, they went to the ice in the Gulf of St. Lawrence to fight the fact that people were clubbing these little pups for fur. And it made me so sad. I was 7 years old, made me so sad, and I could never forget those white fluffy animals. And then when I was more interested in marine life, this shot of Brian Scarry, National Geo, got to me. This is my biggest inspiration ever. It's a shot that really brought me into this world that I could not imagine I could ever witness. But I went there the first time in 2015 on an icebreaker, which allows you to be there day and night. So you hear the sounds, you can go in the morning, sunset, you can stay sunset in the evening, you can be there at sunrise, and it gives you time with these animals that it's not possible in any other way. That year it was very, very cold. It was minus 35 degrees Celsius. The wind was blowing hard. And getting there on an icebreaker, it starts sometimes very easy, but when the wind comes in, all the ice packs up. And this time, and also the next time, they had to come and get us out with the marine, with the coastal guard. But those shots were, here you can see in front of the ice, the wind blowing. So it tells a story about this harsh Arctic environment the pups are in. This gives more of an idea. But I go back and back and back because I want to tell the whole story. Because to me, these animals are the face of climate change. They need the ice to breed on. So the moms come from Greenland to escape predators like polar bears. They swim all the way to the ice forming in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And when the ice patches are thick enough, like they used to be in the past, the moms get up, they have a pup, and then they feed them for 14 days, only 14 days. So the pup gets really fat, and then the moms leave again because they're quite promiscuous, and the males are waiting. And the pup is on its own, and it has to wait another 2-3 weeks to get rid of its fat reserves and also molt. And only when it starts molting, it's ready to swim and starts hunting for its own. So in former days, hunters came and they clubbed the whitecoats, we call them. At this stage, the ice is not thick enough anymore to make it happen. So the fight is different now. We have to change from that fight to making people realize how animals need ice for feeding, like polar bears, and breeding like these cubs. And the one-on-one time with these ones is really very rewarding because I could hang there for hours, be there with them, and then I tell them little stories about how I will tell the story to the world. This year was a very hard year, so I've been twice on a boat. 3 times we have been cancelled last minute when flights were paid and everything, and we lost all the money to go there. And this year they had a plan to bring us there by helicopter for diving, because I also want to show the harp seals in the water. When we wanted to leave, the day before we wanted to leave, we got a call, the ice break up, and all the little pups, they drowned. So you don't have to come here. It's just simply not needed, which was a bit of a setback. But we said, well, we want to tell the story, even if it's a bad one. We are there with helicopters, even if we can only have an aerial shot, we will go and we will just do the waiting game. So we took 14 days, we went there, and the first days we couldn't get out. But then the weather cleared up, and good thing we were there. So if you're not there, you can't take the pictures. So just try. We went to the ice floes because new ice patches had formed, but then that again started breaking up. And if you can see it, there's a few white spots on the ice floes. Those are cubs. And there's the moms in the water. You can only see one mother on the ice, because when the ice gets so thin and the moms wants to get on the floe, they can have the cubs off it because the ice tilts. And these are the moms struggling in slush ice, we call it, to get to their pups to feed it. We had this amazing helicopter pilot who has landed us on the patch, and then starts the real struggle to dive there with your gear. So in the morning you get from the hotel in your dive gear to the helicopter, dragging all the gear, dragging the cylinders in. Then it's a 45 to 50 minute flight, and then you have to set everything up. But at that time you are getting cold because there's no heating or something, and then you have to get in the water. So this was me in the slush ice, which is very hard to work. So I had to dive underneath it, but underneath it were big currents, and even in the currents, I had to slush, and the ice was melting in front of the camera, and it was forming again. It was a very, very weird year. This is my view from beneath, and then I got all these slush and rocks against my body, and I just had to get out. But the only image I was able to take, so not the Brian scary image, but this one was of a pup actually falling through the melting ice. And it's not a good image, but it tells a story about what a hard time they have at this moment in time, and why we need to protect the ice, why we need to try to get our carbon footprint down. And it can sound really crazy coming from me going with a helicopter to that place, but we were actually collaborating with other people, National Geo, a few crews from American news outlets, to work together to get this story out. And we did try to combine a trip, but then COVID came in between. So again, the mom struggling to help her cub, which was not possible. And this is me before the first day. It was scouting in the red exposure suit. And then the picture above is me getting ready in my wet dry suit to get to the ice, setting up the gear. And I have a case, because it's such a long time, you're trying to, you're in your dive gear, you're getting cold. And I had a case of a bit of frostbite, and it's really painful, so I don't want to do that again. So we will be going back to try to take images like this. This is just when one seal was swimming in front of my lens, but not the seal underwater, not the image that is actually my unicorn image. Next year we try to go back by boat, and we're going to try to go 2 weeks to have this whole cycle of life of the harp seals, and a boat will allow us better to document the things that are there or the things that are not there. And even drowning cubs, we can document them. It's heartbreaking, but it has to be told, because yeah, protect what you love. So in short, this whole talk, there's no need for manipulation of wildlife. You just have to be informed and make wise decision. And also, if you only can dive where you live, lead by example. For example, don't use single-use plastic. If you are an ocean ambassador, use something you can reuse, like take your bottle everywhere. I travel all the time with my coffee cup and 3 bottles like this. Also, if one door closes, just turn around and try to open another one. There's no need complaining. You have to create opportunities for yourself. Be an awesome ocean ambassador, and also be informed, because ignorance in this age is a choice. There's so much information around. And remember that luck is a residue of hard work. No pain, no gain. This is me coming up from a snorkel years ago. In the water, I saw the ice forming, and I got out of the water, and I still have to make all the way to the boat in the back, but I was actually freezing up. And it's one of the most painful things, and I just have to adapt. But no pain, no gain, and no effort, no success of no good image, I think. So this was my talk. I hope you picked up something, at least that nothing comes without trying. And if you have any questions, I can take them. So back to Beth.
Thank you, Ellen. That was great. There were so many really interesting and compelling images that you shared with us. And also the story behind some of those was just so evocative and emotional. So I'm going to open it up to, if anyone has questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat box. We'd love to hear what you're wondering about based off of Ellen's presentation. And I appreciate particularly the environmental message that was woven throughout, and the individual impacts that we can have, Ellen. So we'll give people just a moment to
type the questions in the chat box.
In the chat box. So Sarah McDougall is interested to find out in some of those most remote places, how much single-use plastic you saw. That's a great question, Sarah.
It's a great question. If you go to Svalbard, they have a policy most Arctic and Antarctic places, they have a very good policy of not allowing it. And all the operators, there's not a lot of operators there. They give you your bottles if you don't have them. So you don't see a lot of single-use plastic. But then, of course, you have the problem of the wash up on shores. And I've been on a trip in summer with the kids on a boat around Svalbard, and we came to these places where there was usually ice, but we could get there with the boat, which is actually sad. So the kids and us, we decided to do a cleanup, and then you see things washing up like fish traps and plastic and ropes and fishing line, and we had in half an hour we had like 5 full garbage bins full of plastic, and we took them on the boat, first on the dinghy, so it was quite some work, so we got them out. But that's just heartbreaking to see that in places where you were usually not reachable for people, plastic is washing up now. In Ile de la Madeleine, it's less, and they're very aware about it. It's Canada, but they still sell it everywhere, and it's still convenient. So many people choose for convenience, but I think we have to really think first. Look at yourself. So I'm not the person gonna do like, you have to use this or you have to use that, but if I carry these around, and I even have my one in the evening, it's my little wine bottle, it's a bit smaller, because I refuse to have on dive shows. And that's the thing I really hate on dive shows, that you get the plastic cups. Mm-hmm. Like, why? We're all people loving the ocean. So if we can't even change our behavior, why should we ask people that have no relation with the ocean to change their behavior? So I believe in be the best example you can be.
That's a great response. So I'm going to go to Petro's question. How do you see the future of the sites and animals that you covered in this talk?
I get emotional about that because I've seen change, and it's really, it's heartbreaking. So I've been to the polar bears, I think 4 years ago. Michael has been there 2 times after me, but I couldn't free myself. And I've seen the ice he was dealing with. He even had to cut short some trips. It's getting this area or this time where they can't feed. In Svalbard, in Russia, and in Churchill, it's a polar capital of the world. The time that they are on land and can't feed is getting so long. Suppose we are on a diet, you have to fast for 1 day. That's hard. Suppose you are fasting for 1 day and you get it, and then they tell you, oh no, you have to do it for 4 days. That's like, what? You're not prepared for that. And those polar bears, they went from 1 extra month to 2 extra months to 3 extra months without food. And they have this great system of reproducing, that actually the male fertilizes the female, and the female, when she goes denning, she decides, or the body decides, I'm going to go for 1 fertilized egg or 2. She can choose how many, and then those eggs become little cups, fluffy and cute. But we see that from 3 cups that were very normal in the past, those females don't have the fat reserve they need to feed the 3, so they go to 2, and now we see more and more 1 cup, and it's a very sad story. So I don't see the future very brightly, but officially I can't say that, because I'm still hoping those animals will adapt in a way. But yeah, it's sad, like the harp seals. If we don't tell that story, then, for example, there's different things around the seals in Canada. There's still a quota to club them or to hunt seals in Canada, but that's also not black and white, because Inuit people, indigenous people, they use seal meat to feed the dogs, for example, and they do need those dogs to get to places because they don't have a Costco or whatever. So we can't judge indigenous people to hunt seals. But the hunt for fur should not be allowed anymore because the demand is gone. Like Europe doesn't allow fur to come in anymore. And they do tend to go out to club like 3 months old. When they start molding, they are allowed to club them. So Canada should lower the quota, because in a good year when you can get to the ice and they still club them, why do they do it? Other years mortality is 100%. So it's the good years should make up for the bad years in population. But then of course fishermen start complaining that the seals take their fish, but it's actually we are depleting the oceans. So everything is very complicated and there is no black and white, but we should find this balance, a compromise, so everybody is happy and realizes how important these issues are.
I think that's a really interesting way to talk about. Yeah, there's so much complexity and context needed when you think about this.
So, and we can help by not judging some people, but to create a dialogue. Just keep with facts, and then try to compromise or bring a constructive solution for the issues we have.
Ellen, can you talk a bit more about your role with the UN? What does that entail and how did you get involved? That's a question from Caroline.
Well, actually, when I took that shot of the polar bear in the mist, I became one of the 50 femmes photographers for Blancpain, which is a brand in watches. And they have a store at Fifth Avenue in New York, and I was invited for a talk. And I entered the UN competition years ago, the first year and the second year, and I won 2 times, well, in some categories with 2 images. So it was actually a big win. And in that, during the presentation in New York, I met my UN boss, who is from the Division of Ocean Affairs and the Law of the Sea, but also from Legal Affairs. He's a senior legal officer. And he is so passionate about the oceans that he started that photo competition. But his office is so busy with dealing now with matters of the high seas, trying to get some laws implemented there. So it's illegal for the Japanese to go and hunt the whales. So they're dealing with making it less outlaw. They're dealing with all the legal issues within the UN. So he said, well, we having this presentation about this year, could you please, and he saw how passionate I was, and he said, could you please not enter this year, but present at the UN? That was 2016, and just join us for the celebrations of the ocean on UN World Oceans Day. And I said, yes, because I'm a yes person. Whenever anybody asks me, I say yes. And I did that, and then they gave me a bit more responsibility and a bit more because I'm very responsible. I try to get my deadlines. If I promise something, I will do it. And we have this wonderful collaboration. They trust me with the whole segment this year. It was the first time it was a virtual event. They let me talk during this ocean conference at the General Assembly. And we really worked so nicely together that this year I wanted to have a charter that participants had to sign before they could enter the competition, and it was about ethics in photography. And they implemented that because they just said, yeah, that's a great idea. And the following thing is that also UNESCO, they're starting the ocean decade. So from 2021 to 2030, they're going to have a different theme every year. And we now have an ocean alliance of 20 world-renowned photographers, and we all signed the charter too. And we're going to talk about it, about how you can be your best self and how you can also, at this stage, work closely to home. Just go outside, see if you can help with local conservation efforts, and that will reduce our carbon footprint, because a lot of photographers I know, they say, oh, I want to go to Raja and I want to go here and I want to go there. My view is I go for subjects, and I will go again and again and again. I go for the stories. And it is a nice added value. If you are a person that really values your trip, go there, enjoy it. I'm not judging, but also tell the story about what you see and contribute to more awareness. So I'm babbling on, but that's my involvement with the United Nations. So we have a wonderful synergy, actually.
So I don't think that was babbling at all. I think that made a really interesting point that actually ties into another question that we have from Helene Julia, which is, I have a hard time justifying the impact that me traveling has on the environment and still advocate sustainability. So how do you manage? I think you've partially addressed that, but would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I rather go, for example, sometimes I'm asked to talk on a show, and one of them was Asia, ADEX. I do want to go, and sometimes I will not go because I can't justify it because there's not a trip before or after on the way there. So I rather be away from home for 6 weeks and on my way do everything that I can do to contribute, and then come home and have this one-time carbon footprint. Then, oh, I go there, I go home, and then I go there, and I go home, and I go there, and I go home. Because if you don't, it's a bit like consolidation. We are used to living on an island, and if you need packages to come in, you're not going to want them every day to come in. You consolidate your package, and that's the way I approach me traveling. And then again, I had a big issue. I didn't want to travel anymore. But then when you tell stories like I do now, sometimes it is necessary for the word to get out. And on a dive show, it's all about the technique of photography. It's all about the image and the light and this and that. And nobody talks about the ethics, and nobody talks about the animals and their challenges. Well, not nobody, but not a lot. So if I go there, some people say, oh, this was the first time I hear people talking about that. And then I say, okay, this justifies me being there, because maybe if I can just inspire another person to do it or to address it in its talk, then it's going to create a ripple effect. And that's what justifies it for me. But I really, if I need to travel far, I stop, see my mom. I tried to do some research in the area so I can do another thing. Last year, to be in Singapore, I went to look for the otters. There's a city otters, and they have issues. So I'm still working on a story about that. But I was actually looking for otters 5 days before I went to that dive show, and it was really sweaty. But I found them a few days, and I know now more about the challenges of those animals coming back into the city. It's beautiful to see also. That's a story of hope. That's not a story, not a sad story.
And we can
I hope it answers your question, but you can also ask more.
And Evan Cooper has asked, I already have a photography website. What is the best way for me to share my photography with others for furthering conservation and sustainability?
Well, Evan, it's a good question. I have a website, and I haven't visited it for 2 or 3 years, so I really need to put some new content on it. So I don't think the website is gonna do it. I think a lot of things we can do now, and I know we're a bit tired of social media, certainly after this COVID and the things that are happening in the world, which are affecting everybody. It's a time to be kind and not hate. And social media is a different issue before issues or during this pandemic. But I love to share on Instagram, on Facebook. And even though people think, oh, there she is again, whining about this and whining about that. Well, those who don't want to read it, they can just click away or unfriend me or block me. But those that do want to read it, they learn something maybe, or they say, oh yeah, now I'm empowered to do the same, or maybe I'm empowered to go on like I'm doing. So I would just use what's out there, social media, YouTube, but think about the message and be true to yourself. That's the big one to me. It's no use if you see somebody doing something and they have success, don't try to copy it. Everybody is unique, so be true to yourself and do what you can do.
Yeah, I think that's great. On that topic, I'm going to paste into the chat now links to our auction and our online exhibit, as well as Ellen's website, even if she hasn't been there in a few years, and her Instagram. So people can click on those links and go there and take a look.
Yeah.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I think we'll wind things up here. Thank you all for participating. I think, Ellen, thank you so much for taking us on this journey. I learned so much, and I feel like I knew your work and some of the stories behind it beforehand, but now I know so much more. So we really appreciate you giving this talk today and participating in our virtual exhibit and auction. Thank you all for joining us, and happy belated World Oceans Day to all of you.
We just make it a whole year. Make it a whole year. Oceans year.
We need healthy reefs. So thank you all. And Ellen, any last closing words from you?
Just always start with yourself. Even if you get frustrated by other people not doing the things you like, dropping plastic, pick them up. I know it's not the most grateful job, but it's, if you are an example, other people will follow, and I think it's the way to go. To not whine about it, not complain, but contribute to the solution.
Yes, we're all going to stop whining and take action.
Good.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.